they're related, and you can even use them as synonyms. I like to separate them a little bit, but just in general, bias is, we talked about the brain. It filters in the inputs. It is a computer. It's a pattern matching machine. But due to factors like you're tired, so your brain, like think of the computer like it's overheating. When you have a time crunch, like you have to make a decision quickly. When you don't have all the information. So imagine, again, think of a database where you're trying to make an answer, but there's data missing. Now, all these things pretty much happen every day, every minute, every decision. There is no situation I've ever been in where they said you can take as long as you need, even if it's years. I'm going to make sure you have all the data that you have. And it's not going to be anything that's emotionally tied to your decisions. So all these things, the emotions, the time, speed, the number of data, the brain is thinking about the decision, and we think we're making a rational decision, but we're taking a shortcut. So you mentioned confirmation bias. It's not intentional. It's not malicious. It's the way the brain is filtering. So it's like, okay, I have a hypothesis. I think that company A is great. And then I go in the newspaper and I start reading articles, which is data. And one of the articles, the first one says, company A is great. It's like a great place. My brain says, look, those two things connect. My thoughts and theirs, boom. I'm never going to hear anything about company B being bad. And you might actually see it in the paper, but your brain doesn't process it. It's filtered out. So the confirmation bias is whatever you're thinking, our brain tends to find data that proves it and information and tries to avoid data. Now, it's called cognitive bias because it's kind of the way the brain works. It's kind of like the faulty reasoning. Implicit bias is done the same way, but usually an implicit bias is not a decision like, do I like this company? Do I work for this company? Do I buy this stock? Do I, go on this vacation? It's usually a stereotype. It's like, okay, perfect example. I was growing up and the neighbor 2 houses down had kids, and one of the kids always run around. You remember BB guns, right? Like they're guns, but they're not like bullet guns. They're like little BBs. Go around and one day shot my parents' Windows house. My parents were really mad, very nice parents, but they got mad. And the kid had red hair. And growing up, I'm always like, redheads, those troublemakers, those BB guns. And then I'd see a couple of movies. I think there was a movie with John Ritter called Problem Child, and the kid had red hair. So my whole life, implicitly, I'm not against redheads, but I would see someone that had red hair, and I would be like, unconscious, there goes a troublemaker. Yep. And this impacts work. Like you're recruiting, you're trying to hire. Imagine if that's happening and you can't stop it. Well, then the long story short, I have 4 kids. My third one came out, more hair on his head than I have, and it was flaming orange. I'm like, well, wait a second. Redheads can't be bad. That was what my brain needed to trigger me and say, like, well, time out. You're implicitly telling everyone you've seen in the past 40 years that has red hair, they're bad people because of one experience with a 9-year-old 30 years ago. So when you start associating with things, it's sometimes called implicit bias. And there's actually tests that you can do online through Harvard that let you to see if you like have an implicit bias toward different protected classes and so forth. So it's the same mechanism. It's the brain filtering things out that are relevant for making a decision so that you don't end up stereotyping or discriminating against people.